pronunciation before I say her name because my brain wants to always pronounce her name differently. So tonight in our muse studies, we're talking about Calliope. So real quick, like she is the eldest muse, right? She is the muse of poetry, writing, speech. So she's oftentimes connected to obviously writers, politicians, legal, like the legal justice system. Whenever there's elections, she usually is one that if you work with the Hellenistic pantheon, that people will call to. So she does help with journey work. So that could be if you're developing something in writing or some sort of speech that has a journey orientation there. But a lot of times it's our own personal journeys, finding our own strengths and figuring out how we can tap into those fully. So she's also connected to journaling. Obviously, she is the muse of writing, and not just journaling or creating. It's more like historical journaling is what I like to call it. That's like what my grandmothers did, keeping a record of family recipes, family rituals, and that a lot of times will turn into automatic writing sessions. Anytime we journal a lot, we start going through inner purging, especially if we're doing shadow work. There is that automatic writing that, if you allow it to occur, will occur. And so she definitely is attached to that. Anytime we're writing a ritual, we're writing a spell, a compound for a spell, like when I'm writing my recipes, when we're writing any kind of incantation, Calliope is a great deity to work with. She can really be inspirational. Public speaking and persuasion. If you have to get in front of a crowd for any reason, small or large, again, she's very helpful in that arena, not just with giving us the right words at the right time, but helping with composure because those can be high stress situations. Um, Her symbolism, a lot of times you'll see her with the lyre, a writing tablet, scrolls, very similar to a lot of the other muses. It's usually instruments or writing utensils, with the muses because they are inspirational. So yeah, so that is the quick cheat sheet. Let me pull up our um, presentation, which I'm getting better and better at, you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, so as we talk about Calliope, Calliope is one of the hardest muses to track down. Some of the other muses we work with, like Urania, Melpomene, they have like these pre-written types of works or kind of pre-configured offerings. With Calliope, it's not like that. It's very individualistic. So it was hard for me to find those kind of details for you, but I did find some. She is very connected to cosmic energy, so physics, science. Science is magic, magic is science, and physics is really magic. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm just going to lay some foundational things for you guys so you know how to use that in your practice. All right, so Calliope, she was nicknamed Beautiful Voice. She had a very harmonious voice. One of the reasons I chose her today is for those of you that were in the Sacred Sexuality group last week. We talked about Buddhism and Buddhist magic, and we talked about mantras and how mantras are spells using sacred words, sacred sounds, and sacred syllables. Well, Calliope is she's very tied into that. Calliope is that sacred, it's sacred noise, I guess we'll call it that for Calliope today. It's a harmonious voice is what she was known for. She is the chief of all muses. She's the head muse, the oldest, the wisest. She is the first. She is the beginning. So when you read about her in like old mythology, she is sometimes referenced to as the beginning or the first instead of saying her name. So in a lot of her art, because there's a lot of art with Calliope featured in it, she is carrying a roll of paper or a book, or she has a gold crown, but she also can be depicted with her children. Her son was Orpheus, which if you know mythology, that's a very sad hero's tale, but that she was the mother to Orpheus. Now, Dante, I've talked about Dante before with you guys. Divine Comedy. It is a novel he created. It's 3 books. They're written in cantos, which are poems. It's Italian poetry. It's Hell, Purgatory, and Heaven. It's called Inferno, Purgatorio, Paradiso. Dante himself used to petition and speak to Calliope. especially when creating the Divine Comedy. And a lot of people don't know this, but in Purgatory, the very first canto, so the first paragraph, lines 7 through 12, is him doing a dedication to Calliope in the Divine Comedy. So I just thought that was something I would point out, because not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of people know that Dante, gave thanks and gratitude to Calliope for writing that great work. It's one of my favorite pieces of literature. Okay, again, she was the eldest, known for eloquence. She did work with kings and princes. So a lot of times she is connected to the world of politics, politicians, especially during elections. So Calliope was petitioned heavily during elections in ancient times. So in the classical era, the muses were really assigned very specific artistic spheres. Now we kind of open it up because we see they were more than just one or two things. But during the classical era, she was really kind of chained to just poetry. And so we can see her here. This is a classical era art depiction of Calliope where she's holding the tablet. But I wanted to point out the reason I brought this up is if you look at older pieces or representations of Calliope, she's always holding a lyre. So pre-classical era is going to be a lyre, post-classical era is going to be the tablet or the scroll. As I said, she was the mother of Orpheus. For those of you that know mythology or not a big deal. He was dismembered by the Bacchantes, and she went back and recovered his head in the mythological tales, and she enshrined it on the island of Lesbos. So there are a lot of art depictions of her with Orpheus. Some of them are with her just with Orpheus's head. So there's some dark art out there too. But again, her nickname was Beautiful Voice. So I always think of Buddhism with Calliope, very Buddhist with the sacred sound, the sacred syllables. So she had a lot of magic and power as a Greek muse, not just because she was the eldest, but her magic was manifested in many different areas. So the first area I wanted to just kind of review was divine inspiration. Now, all the muses are very, very inspiring when it comes to the arts and the sciences. And Calliope really ignited creativity with poets and writers, orators. So again, politicians, musicians. She really was able to, I guess, help them compose profound literary works. Is how I wrote it here, helping you to articulate. Whether again that's a small crowd, a large crowd, or maybe you're just having a one-on-one combo with your kid, helping you articulate what needs to be said, helping to craft very captivating, powerful music. And she wasn't merely just a passive presence. When we talk about the muses, some of them are very passive. Calliope was not. As a matter of fact, she was known to have been able to transmit what's called the creative flame, and nowadays, like New Age groups, it's called the violet flame. But that violet creative flame, she actually would transmit that and directly influence and empower individuals that were petitioning her or calling out to her for help, that she wanted to help, of course. So again, a lot of associations to eloquence. Eloquence was very big back then. It should be now, but not so much in modern days and times. But very powerful force when it comes to communication. So therapists sometimes can work with Calliope, especially when there needs to be some creative interpretation or creative communication with somebody who might be struggling, or even in relationships. Our day-to-day relationships, we tend to have, like right now, Mercury and Saturn are doing this headbutting thing, and so communications are a little bit more difficult now. So it's easier for us to misunderstand, miscommunicate, misinterpret things that are being said. And so she is one to work with if there's clarity needed, if you need that extra surge of clarity. If you need help finding the right words, crafting a persuasive argument. So court, back in the Roman courts, she was often by defendants, defendants that were, in court for a crime would call out to Calliope for help to craft their argument for their case. So any kind of inspiring speech or text really is, Calliope's wheelhouse. Also storytelling. So again, it's not just the verbal expression, but it's the written expression. And not just poetry. I know I beat the poetry bush to death because there's so many great poets that kind of give thanks to Calliope. But it's just basic storytelling. If you're trying to make your story impactful, memorable, if you're writing something that you want to be persuasive, if you're teaching something and you're writing a text that is going to be used to teach a skill, or to heal, again, therapy, if you are trying to heal somebody or something, she works in all those arenas in terms of storytelling, narrative, creative word, sacred word, symbolic power. Words, of course, are very, very powerful. We use them for everything. So she does help with constructing the right words, especially if you're educating, if you're in a position where you're teaching something, I think she is very, very useful. And a lot of what she also, this is back in, Greco-Roman era, but she would always encourage that moral reflection while fostering courage. So we have all these great mythological tales of heroes, dismembering the evil, whatever, three-eyed giant. And she was always kind of the one in the background that was trying to bring in the morality of a situation and not just kind of the blood and guts of it. So keep that in mind too. And again, that connection to the Buddhist mantras, divine comedy, persuasion. It's funny, like I always think of Trump when I think of Calliope, like because Trump has this ability, to really like speak very powerfully, and like when you watch him talk to people, like he has a spellbinding effect. And so I think of Calliope because that's the kind of power she would give politicians, to be able to talk to the masses in a very powerful, very kind of like dramatic way. So again, like if you had to give us a very important speech or make a very impactful message, any oration, she's great for. And she's actually considered to be a protector of great orators. So some of the most powerful orators in all time, since the Greco-Roman period, it's said that she takes a special interest in those individuals and she is very protective of them and she will protect them in the world. So there's that if you want protection. Um, what else here? We kind of talked about some of this. I kind of beat some of these bushes to death just because, I get worked up when I start writing. Um, so yeah, anything that involves artistic expression, art, like I like to do acrylic art, sometimes I'll dedicate my art to the different muses, songs. I'm trying to think. Oh, okay. So when constructing or reciting magical spells and invocations, connecting with her would amplify the power and effect of the words that you're choosing to use in those works. So again, mantras, I compared it to mantras. So, and this is really about kind of free range writing too. This isn't like you need to go find a spell and do it, this is you writing your own stuff, your own invocations, your own spells, and having her guide you in creating something that's truly unique to you, and using the right words and doing that. So it's not about recitation or finding it and then it's about creating your own. Other things that she's known for. So she was a transmission of knowledge and memory. She was the daughter, and I'm not the goddess of memory. She was the daughter of the goddess of memory. I don't know how to pronounce her name. I do, but I don't now that I'm looking at it. Calliope. I have to remember Calliope is pronounced Calliope. I can't be looking at these other Greek words and trying to figure it out. So Calliope is connected to divine memory. Isn't that funny? Because I'm having memory issues. She helps to preserve and transmit traditions, legends, ancient laws, to ensure the continuity of knowledge and stories across generations. So that's like in the beginning when I was talking about journaling. It's almost like historical journaling. So like I have an aunt who does family genealogy, hardcore genealogy. And so she does this. And Calliope would be a wonderful Hellenistic deity for her to work with, which she wouldn't because she believes this is devil worship. But if she weren't so close-minded, Calliope, this is her wheelhouse, doing that historical journaling for the generations to come. I love that. I do that too. I just think like you need that traditional legacy to pass on each generation. Vengeful acts, the muses, as beautiful and wonderful as they are, can be vengeful at times. So Calliope and her eight sisters, if they were challenged or disrespected, they would take revenge, and Calliope was sort of the ringleader for that. So there is an old mythological tale of these nine mortal sisters who actually claimed they were better musicians than the muses. They could create better music. And so, of course, the muses weren't having that shit. They challenged them to a contest. Calliope led it, of course. Anytime they challenged anybody to a contest, Calliope was the leader. And Calliope won the contest for them by doing these spell binding stories and songs. And so, because they won the contest and they turned around and turned those nine mortal sisters into what they called chattering magpies for eternity as punishment. So I don't know, whatever that looks like in your mind, but it doesn't sound great. Doesn't sound nice. Okay, so justice and wisdom. Again, we talked about court, we talked about judges, defendants seeking help with, defending themselves. Calliope was very good with clarity, truth, especially when she was evoked, when any kind of judging was going on, like any kind of contest, not just your regular like political debates or public speaking, but especially when there was judgment involved. And again, so her magic really lies in inspiration, empowerment, shaping your artistic and intellectual endeavors, and that of humankind as a whole. She is a symbol of the transformation or the transformative and lasting impact of words. And I always think that's important because we don't really it's always hindsight when it comes to words, right? We say things and then it's not until later on that we realize the impact of what we've said. And so Calliope to me is that reminder of always being mindful of the words we're using, what we're saying, how we're saying it, when we're saying it, because we need to get in front of that a little bit as humans because we tend not to. And words do make lasting impacts. And so that's one of her transformative kind of expressive powers. So again, I think that, if you wanted to work with her, it would be for having more clear, impactful, and inspiring communications. With her, there isn't any, again, you could say anything, talk to her like you were talking to your grandma. There is no special invocation. She wants you to write your own or say what's, truly on your mind and heart. If you were going to give offerings, they usually recommend just the generic Greek pantheon offerings. Those are things like herbs like rosemary, olive oil, an olive branch, red wine, baked goods like bread, et cetera, et cetera. So your kind of generic Greek pantheon offerings is basically what she accepts, although I think she would probably accept anything. I think a lot of the muses will accept a song if you wanted to sing a song or a piece of art that you scribbled in a notebook that you never showed another living soul, whatever you wanted to really give as an offering. Now, Calliope represents, like I said, the beginning, the first, and the ancient energy within us all. So she is heavily attached to science and physics, and using science in our practices, our magical practices. So this is a quote from Tyson. We are all connected. We're connected to each other biologically, we're connected to the earth chemically, and we are connected to the rest of the universe atomically. And this is true. And if we understand just the bare bones of this, we can use that in our own magical practices. So when we talked about Urania, Urania is the muse of astronomy and astrology. And astrology shows us that there are connections between us and the cosmos, right? If we look at a birth chart, we can kind of look at how the energy plays out with, the impact of the planet's energy, the constellations, asteroids, the sun, the moon. We can see even in our transits and progressions how energy changes and shifts based on that cosmic or cosmo-based energy. And so if we understand a little more about the science of that, like I said, we can add this to our magic. And that's where Calliope comes in more than Urania. Now, I know this is a scary ass chart. I know this is horrifying, right? This was the most horrifying chart in, what was it, middle school? I think they rolled this out and you had to like memorize it and do all these projects with the periodic table of the elements. It was awful. And I'm just going to talk about a couple of things on here, but I wanted to show it to you as a visual because These are elements that we use in magic because all of these elements are either within us, around us, or in the items that we're using when we cast, or even if we're not intentionally casting, if we're unintentionally casting. And so obviously at our ages, we're not going to probably, there's certain things that we'll know on here and certain things we don't need to know, but this does break down to this kind of atomic level. And so this is Cleopatra the Alchemist. From alchemy to astronomy, all elements have astrophysical origins, everything. It's that as below, as above, so below. And it's very, very true. The elements on Earth came from the solar nebula. These were produced by ancestor stars to our sun. So ancestors to our sun, right? Everything is one, as above, so below. Everything has some sort of astrophysical origin. And understanding just a little bit of that can really kind of amplify your magical workings. So here's another scary chart. It's called the origins of the elements. And the reason I'm showing it to you is because I'm going to break down just a couple of elements and how things are created. So right here in the middle of this chart, there's these 8 diagrams. So every element that we use was created one of these ways. Either it was human made, it was created by the merging of neutron stars, or the dying of a low mass or high mass star, some sort of cosmic ray collision, the Big Bang. I don't care what your religion, it could have been God or whoever you believe it was. Something happened, right? Something happened. A deity did it, or maybe a deity didn't. But the point is, there was a Big Bang. And then we have white dwarf supernovas, radioactive decay. So these 8 areas, this is what pretty much for the most part creates all the elements that we deal with. And there's just a couple that we're going to talk about tonight. So let me just move this so I can show you on my charts. Hydrogen and helium, they're right up here at the very top of the origins of the elements. The hydrogen and helium were created in the Big Bang, and that's going to be important for some of the things that we talk about tonight. Couple of the other ones that we're going to talk about is iron. Iron's right here. It's the capital F, small e. We're going to talk about boron right here, the B. And as you can see, iron is created by what? If we look at that image right there in the box, white dwarf supernova, right? But there's some, let me get into it. But this is white dwarf supernova, boron, cosmic ray collisions, and carbon. You know that we're all carbon, right? So we're not all carbon, but there's carbon in us. And oh, hang on, wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. And that's from dying low mass stars. So this chart kind of gives you an idea of how the element came into existence. Okay, so that's why I like this chart, and that's why I'm showing it to you, because if you like science and your magic and you're choosing certain elements to work a spell, this is a nice chart to have to know the astral origins or the astral or cosmic energy of that element. So you can see right here where it came from. So that's why I'm showing you this chart. I'm not going to get crazy. I will, there's a couple slides that are crazy, but not many, you guys. All right, so Big Bang nucleosynthesis, synthesis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. The only reason I'm bringing this up is for one reason. That's when all the hydrogen that exists was created, right? So you guys know what hydrogen is, right? It's water. So all the water that exists or ever will exist was created during Big Bang nucleosynthesis. So water is sacred. Like today I did the muse service, and that's a water casting. So there is sacred power to water. And I guess that's why I wanted to bring it up. So during the Big Bang nucleosynthesis, it's in the first few minutes of the universe's life that this happened. So hydrogen, helium, about 1/4 of the present helium, and small amounts of other trace whatever were created. Hydrogen is a big one because that's water, right? And there's nothing more important to us as human beings than water. And that's all the water we have came from this Big Bang event. I don't know if many people know that. Did you guys know that? That all the water that ever exists and that exists came from the Big Bang? That's it. Anyway, moving on. Stellar fusion. The reason I'm bringing this up is, so we just talked about hydrogen. So consider that like the first fuel. So all stars, we're going to talk about stars now. All stars fuse hydrogen into helium during their lifetimes. They do that a couple different ways. It always has the same outcome, but it's why the sun shines. Hydrogen fusion is why we have sunlight, right? I know that this, you're probably thinking, what the fuck? But this ties into magic. I swear to God, it does. I swear, just follow with me, just go with me. Um, and we're talking about star magic too. So it's important when I start talking about stars going into the next slides. These are the things I want you to remember. Stars take hydrogen and turn it into helium. Most stars are adult age. There's only a few that are brand new or old. And the sun shines because of hydrogen fusion. Okay, very simple. That's why I'm bringing up stellar fusion. Everybody with me so far? I haven't hurt anybody's heads yet. Okay, so energy is agnostic. Does everybody know what that means when I say energy is agnostic for the most part, right? Energy is agnostic. Um, this chart, and the reason I'm saying that is because, well, for lots of reasons. Some of the stuff I'm talking about kind of is very sciency, but I guess here's the reason I'm bringing this up, because when we start talking about science and we start talking about things like Big Bang, I feel like there's this natural separation that occurs in us away from spirituality and away from religion and away from belief structures. And I'm trying to tie the two in together, and that can be very difficult to do when you're breaking all this kind of stuff down. But one example I wanted to use was like about helium. So there's lots of different types of helium, right? So two helium threes, this little chart, it talks about different, how things are made right here. I'm talking about helium specifically in this chart. So two helium threes equals helium four. There's energy released at each step, but helium four is what we put in our balloons, you guys. Did you know that that helium that you're putting into balloons is made like in the gates of a star? Isn't that like amazing? Doesn't that blow your mind? I mean, to just think about that. How many times have you went and had a balloon filled for a party and that gas comes from a star, like outer space? Like, I mean, I just think it's like mind blowing. I guess maybe it's just me, but it's hard to wrap your head around. Like, it's a lot. Like, that's why I say science is magic, magic is science. But again, I'm trying to paint a picture into how we can incorporate this into our magical practices. Okay, so I don't want to get confusing because I start mentioning other things here, and maybe we won't talk about that. But I do want to talk about gamma rays. Gamma rays are the highest. It's the highest energy known, and so that's one thing I want you guys to remember, if nothing else. Um, when a star dies and purges, that's where interstellar mediums are made. So that's another thing I need you guys to remember as we move forward. Is this okay? Because now I'm talking out loud and I'm reading it to people. When I was doing it myself, like it was totally fine. But now I'm thinking, I hope I'm not really confusing you guys. But um, I was kind of making this chart here to kind of show you the chain, the proton chain, protons to neutrons, how it has to split out positrons and you get energy. But now I'm thinking that's a lot and I'm not going to do that to you. So we'll just move on to the next slide, because Lisa is probably the only one right now in the Zoom that's like, okay, so let's move on. So elemental ancestors to our sun. If you're still awakened with me, here we are. So is released. We're witches. We love energy, right? Energy is the reason that we're alive and that there's life on this planet. It's why plants grow. It's why we're here. It's a fundamental energy that we can tap into. And that's why I'm talking about energy, is so that I can explain how we tap into it without, getting you too confused. This is the end state of stars. I talk about supernovas or planetary nebulas. I think everybody knows what those are, right? Stars process material during their lifetimes that we use down here, right? It seeds the interstellar material with the elements that were made, like in the beginning, that we use in the form of crystals, for example, down here. So crystals are like astrophysical objects. And so for those of you that know Deborah is the physicist that does Mystic South. I've sat in on her workshops for the last couple of years. And this last year, we talked about iron. So iron fusion can only create elements up to iron. So we talked a little bit about fusion. So iron is kind of like, and you know what iron is? Iron is nails, blood, hemoglobin, right? Iron's very, very important. It's made from the very largest of stars. It's the top of the binding energy curve. You can't do fusion after that, right? Gravity wins, then there's a supernova, blah, blah, blah. It is a stable nucleus, though. It's made through what's called neutron capture. It's uncommon. It's when two neutrons merge. You take the iron, you're packing neutrons on it, and this radioactive decay process happens over the next few billion years, and boom, you have iron. I simplified it. Does that make sense to everybody? That's how precious iron is. I'm trying to paint a picture of how iron is made and why it's so precious and why it's important. Um, if Lisa has anything to add to any of this, jump in at any time. Here is my diagram of packing on the neutrons. There are two different processes. There's a slow process and a rapid process. And this is just like magic. It is just like energetic magic. So when we are creating petitions and when we are creating energy manipulations, right? Energetic manipulations, we're packing on energy, right? And the different energy and the different petitions and the different deital forces that we're packing onto that intent that we are pushing out with sacred fire or sacred water or whatever we're working with, and we're pushing that out, we are almost like working our own kind of S process and R process, right? When we're talking about stars and neutrons, it's a little bit different, but it's the same concept really here on planet Earth. We're stacking on and we're creating S process and R processes with energy. So it's either rapid neutron capture or slow neutron capture when we're talking about the astrophysics like aspect of it. But here on Earth, doing spells, same difference, only it's different types of energy and deital force, right? So slow process, few million years, rapid process takes less than a second. Again, divine timing with petitions and magic. You know, boy, I would love it if all of my petitions were rapid. I mean, thank God the slow doesn't take a million years, but so gold and platinum are made in the rapid process. That's made less than a second. Less than a second, gold and platinum is made during a neutron capture process. Silver is made half rapid, half slow. So you have some that's made like less than a second and some that takes a few million years. So it makes you wonder, why isn't silver more valuable? Why is silver? I don't know. I don't get it. Maybe it's just because the science makes more of it. I don't know. Lisa, do you know why silver isn't more expensive or more valuable than gold or platinum, considering gold and platinum are only made in the rapid process and silver is made in both? Do you know why that is?
Short answer, it really should be close to just as valuable. Long
Right.
answer, historic and finance reasons.
Yeah, so that's what I think too, is like when you look at it, like if gold and platinum come to us only in rapid process through neutron capture, and silver comes half of each rapid and slow, you would think silver would be more valuable. It would have more value than gold or platinum. That's the way I look at it. But yeah, I guess like society,
Well,
whatever.
well, also there's a higher demand for gold, so that's why too,
I
because
guess.
people like gold better.
But silver is what's used in all our electronics. So right now,
True.
there's such a higher demand for silver that some of the investment silver is being taken and melted down for electronics now.
Oh,
Yep.
wow. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. That's awesome. So my silver bars will go up. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
And
in the commodities market, silver, we're not just looking at gold anymore, we're looking at silver as well. So, which
Oh,
is
good.
cool.
and,
Yeah.
and
Because
platinum is
that's my
also
budget. I'm a silver collector. That's right in my budget.
and platinum is more expensive because
Yes.
it's harder to find, and they also do use it in electronics as well, but higher well, I don't know, the more
The higher,
complex
like more
electronics.
complex
Yeah,
electronics. Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I wanted to roll this out. You got everybody knows what gold, platinum, and silver is, and I'm trying to think of ways to explain processes that are astrophysical processes that are also taking place in magic and how we can understand the one to understand the other. All of these are made from the guts of stars. Everything we do as magicians or witches, we're using the guts of stars to do, right? So again, I was talking about gamma ray bursts in 2017. There was this detection, and maybe Lisa can explain this a little bit more. But when I was sitting in on Deborah's course this last year, we were talking about gamma ray bursts and this detection of gravity waves, and they're gold in the spectrum, black hole merging with neutron stars theories or whatever. So I mean, all of this, and I guess the reason I'm rolling this out to you guys is I'm just trying to again create the bridge between the astrophysical and the here on earth, what we're doing in our rooms with our amethysts and our rose quartz, like how related they are, and like how we're using astrophysical energy, how amazing it is, how rare some of these processes are, how long they take. You know, some of the silver that we're using on our altars may have taken a few million years through the S process of neutron capture to, you know, come into being. So I just think it's like, when you think about it in terms of that, like it makes everything more, you know, like, I don't know, like exciting, or I guess powerful. Like it's an infusion of power. All right, let me, oh, damn it. Here I go again. Hang on. This damn box. Every time, there we go. I got it. It keeps wanting to move on me. All right, so end capture. Okay, so anyways, we're kind of already talking about slow and rapid neutron capture. And the reason I keep bringing up neutron capture is because a lot of the elements I'm going to break down here at the end of the presentation that we can use at our altars and in magic is through this end capture process. So about half of the known material is from this. I mentioned isotopes, I think, in the beginning. That's more nuclear physics. The slow process, you know, when we were talking about half of silver being through the slow process, happens in the end states of stars. Rapid process, so gold and platinum, happens in much rarer situations. That's massive star explosions and mergers of compact objects. So if you buy a gold coin, yeah, it was created through rapid process, but that's like that element that, and I don't know how you want to explain it, that element of that gold was through like a star explosion or a merger or some sort of compact. Like that's a huge thing, right? When you think about it, when you're holding a piece of gold in your hand, are you thinking about a star exploding to create it? No. But that, think of all that power, all of that energy that's in that gold. Like that little piece of gold in your hand, a star, literally, it is connected anciently to that star exploding. Like that's kind of amazing. Like when you think about all the power, all that astrophysical power in that little piece of gold. And I guess that's why I'm explaining this. And it's not just to like, or science, blah, blah, blah. Where's the magic? So, I mean, like, and I know I sometimes I get heady, but I feel like if I don't get a little bit heady, something's going to be missed in the recipe. And then like I have to backtrack and explain something anyway. So the reason I am going through all of this heady science stuff and bringing up periodic tables of elements and shit is because I want you to look at your magical tools that you use, right? What do we use? We use I like to call them hand swords, like tiny swords. We use big swords. We use crystals. We use water. All of our magical tools have astrophysical power and energy. And like I said, some of it is mind-blowing power from the merger of stars, from these neutron capture processes that are mind-blowing, from the Big Bang. You know, our hydrogen in our water is from the beginning of all things. Like, think of that in terms of power when you're using that element, that item, how much power you can tap into. So all of these contain the energy of the universe, all of it. And if you know the physics, knowing the physics is going to enhance the metaphysics of that item. Just the knowledge is power. It's like when I was in college, we all had to take behavior disorders as a prereq before we went into our CDAC courses. And the reason they made us do that our freshman, sophomore years is because just by taking the course and learning about the mental disorders made you 5% less likely to ever develop them. It was an immunization, is what it was. It was an immunization from developing those mental disorders. So knowing the physics and the science of what you're using enhances the metaphysics. It's almost like not an immunization, but it's an empowerment. It's a surge of power now that you have this knowledge. Sorry, I'm going winded again. All right, the universe is on your altar. Okay, whatever your altar looks like, whatever that is, your iron, you're going to have iron on there. And when you work with iron, I want you to think that is from the end state fusion and massive stars. Think of how massive that energy is. Your silver from that slow and rapid process of neutron capture. That gold, that rapid process. Silicon is almost in every single crystal there is, right? So that's end state fusion in massive stars. Same with titanium, same with aluminum. These are in your crystals. These are all on your altar or maybe as decoration in your home. So you have the power, this astral power right here in these tiny objects that you can use. Hang on. Okay, so again, crystals have cosmos energy. A lot of crystals have silicon. There's titanium and rose quartz. There's aluminum and amethyst. If you look at that periodic table of elements or the creation of those elements, there's two different charts. It can break down for you, what's in these crystals if you're looking for very specific crystals. So, for example, you want to use elemental associations in your magic, right? So, say I'm building a spell for somebody. Say I'm building something that it needs to protect that person. It needs to wash out anything harmful energetically that they've already absorbed. I need something very structured. So I might use boron. And if you remember in the beginning, I showed you boron, how it was created, where it was on the periodic table of elements. Boron builds bones in the human body. That element it helps us build bones. When we use it in magic, we can build structures in magic with that element. So we can take boron, something that contains boron, and we can incorporate it into whatever that cast is going to be. If we're going to melt something down, if we're going to create something to be released in water, whatever it is, we can use it to build structure in that spell. So that's an example. Uranium. Uranium is like outward energy, right? So outer work. So if I'm doing sourcing work, I may try to find a way to incorporate some sort of, I don't know, uranium aspect. Again, just an example. But if you look at the table and you know what the correspondences are, you can build that into your spells. You can build that into your home environment. If you want a more protective iron, right? So back in the day, we would put 4 iron nails. We would use old railroad spikes because those had the most actual iron in them. And you would take 1 to each corner of your property, north, south, east, and west, to protect your property. Same concept, right? So, I mean, you can use these elements, these ancient elements, these astrophysical elements in your magical workings, or if you're not doing magical workings, maybe you want to use it in your home for protection or for a happier home life. It can be for anything. Also, don't forget the universe within, right? So when I talk to people and they're getting worked up about building a pretty altar with lots of statues and this, that, and the other thing, I tell them you don't need any of that. Sure, it's nice to have a visual, but you don't need it. We are our bodies. If we have nothing else in the world and we just have our bodies and we don't have an altar or money for statues or for pretty rocks, you can use what's in you. Like, you can use what's already inside your body. You have carbon in there. Carbon is created by helium fusion. You have sodium, carbon fusion, potassium, oxygen fusion in supernovas, right? Oxygen, carbon, helium fusion, hydrogen from that Big Bang nucleosynthesis I talked about in the beginning. All of these elements are inside your human body. So if you don't have an altar, if you have nothing else, you have those elements in your body that you can use to manifest things, right? You can use these elements to manifest things by focusing just your intents and your mindset. And you know even if you don't work with deity, honestly, if you're a solo and you don't work with deity and you do your own thing in your own lane, you can use the astrophysical elements to manifest. So that's why I kind of wanted to point out the universe within, because not everybody has an altar or money for fancy statues, and you don't need it. So Carl Sagan, I know Lisa knows who that is at least, but Carl Sagan is a science community guy. In the end, the cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff, and we are a way for the universe to know itself through thyself. So if you don't know who Carl Sagan is, he's awesome. He has lots of great quotes. But you guys, no more periodic table of elements and stuff share. That was it, you guys. That was my presentation for tonight. Now, if you remember in the beginning, it was all about I'm going to call her Calliope, and that's not her name. Damn it! I got to look at her pronunciation again. Does anybody on Calliope? Calliope. I keep wanting to call her a jacked up name. So we talked about Calliope, and then I went into the cosmic astral energetic field because she